All right, so I've started recording and I'll turn it over to the judges.
Thank you. My name is Richard Leiter. I'm a professor and director of the Law Library at the University of Nebraska College of Law, coming to you live from Lincoln, Nebraska. I've been judging state competitions for about 15 years, and this is my first time in the Big Top. So happy to be here and can't wait to hear your presentations. And we introduce my co-judges, Candida.
Hi, my name is Candida Steele, and I'm retired as a judge on the U.S. Civilian Board of Contract Appeals. I handle federal government contract disputes around the country, and I've been with the program for about 20 years. And if I can just say hello to Roger down there. Nice to see your name, and welcome everybody. Looking forward to this hearing.
All right, good morning. Hello, I'm Kurt Mabus. I'm a Lieutenant Colonel in the United States Air Force, practicing JAG for about 12 years now, currently in Colorado Springs, where I teach law at the Air Force Academy and alum of the program as well.
Can you introduce yourselves, please?
Hello, my name is Zyman Olby, and I am a junior at Easthampton High School.
Hi, I'm James Aquino, and I'm also a junior at Easthampton High School.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Winberg, and I'm a senior at Easthampton High School, and this is our teacher, Miss Kelly Brown.
Nice to meet you all. Hello. All right, we're going to be discussing question 2, unit 5. A Bill of Rights is what the people are entitled to against every government on earth, general or particular, and what no government should refuse or rest on inference. Do you agree or disagree with Thomas Jefferson? What are the advantages and disadvantages of a national Bill of Rights as compared to state bills of rights? And what are the differences between positive and negative rights? And what are the more important to the preservation of liberty? Take it away.
We agree with Jefferson that a national Bill of Rights is necessary to protect against arbitrary and tyrannical government. Without expressed and enforceable limits, individual liberties will always be at risk. The idea of government responsibility to protect rights can be traced back to ancient Rome, where Cicero described the government's obligation to protect life and property, and Aristotle defined eudaimonia as connected to both virtue and material wealth. Both are tied to liberty. In his second treatise on government, John Locke explained that the purpose of government as preserving natural rights. In his own lifetime, Jefferson witnessed how Great Britain had curtailed the rights of colonists through the Intolerable Acts, writs of assistance, and libel cases, and he clearly connected the protection of rights to the pursuit of happiness in the Declaration of Independence. The commitment to liberty was so strong in 1787 that 12 out of 13 states began their constitutions with a Bill of Rights. The arguments that a federal Bill of Rights is unnecessary, made by Federalists like James Madison and Alexander Hamilton during the ratification debates, were not only weak, but contradictory, as pointed out by scholar Akil Amar.
As Jefferson stated, a national Bill of Rights can serve as a palladium of liberties that all governments must follow. But for 130 years, case law for the federal Bill of Rights is almost non-existent, even in the face of legislation that clearly violated it, such as the Alien and Sedition Acts. The passage of the 14th Amendment and the gradual incorporation to the Bill of Rights to the states, in cases like Palco v. Connecticut and McDonald v. Chicago, has made it vastly more powerful. It provides an additional protection for individual liberties if a state violates individual rights. A federal Bill of Rights is important because states that choose not to protect certain rights are more often the most likely to violate those rights.
State bills of rights were originally the more direct and beneficial structure, can act as models for federal rights, and provide additional protections in some cases. First, because of their broad police powers, state officials affect people's everyday lives more than the federal government, and therefore require more enumerated limits. Second, as articulated by Justice Brandeis in New State Ice Company v. Liebman, states can act as laboratories of democracy. Rights like marriage equality can first be established on a state level, and state constitutions can be amended more easily because state legislators and populations are more likely to agree on rights, seen in Florida's recent amendment to end disenfranchisement.
The interaction between state and federal bills of rights varies between rights and between states. When an interstitial analysis method is used, such as in New Jersey v. Johnson, where the New Jersey Supreme Court declared that their state constitution includes stricter search protections than the Fourth Amendment, the federal Bill of Rights is used as a minimum standard of protection. Similarly, when Carpenter v. US established additional protections against digital searches, the Massachusetts Constitution would have already required a warrant. However, a lockstep analysis, where the state chooses to align with federal decisions despite having different language in their constitution, fails to utilize these additional protections, as seen in Pennsylvania's interpretation of their state constitution's voting rights provisions.
Negative rights restrict government actions, such as the First and Second Amendments. Positive rights are rights that the government is forced to provide you, such as the right to public education, which currently exists in all 50 state constitutions but not federally. Rights like the Sixth Amendment right to counsel, which say that the government cannot do X unless they give you Y, are the mix of the two. Our constitutional rights are almost exclusively negative, and many of our positive rights come from state legislation, such as the California Consumer Privacy Act, a positive protection of privacy rights. Many European governments have positive rights like healthcare and housing, which are closely linked to the common good and create obligations for government and taxpayers.
We believe that negative rights are more important to the preservation of liberty and the pursuit of happiness. In his dissent in Olmsted v. US, Justice Brandeis articulated the importance of the right to be let alone. While he was referring to the Fourth Amendment, his broader point about liberty is essential to the American Bill of Negative Rights. The right to not be harassed and to think, believe, and question freely are central to human happiness, and this is liberty. Thank you. We're ready for your questions.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you very much for a provocative presentation. There's so many different ways that we can take this, but let me start out. What circumstances, if any, would cause a person to lose his or her rights found in the Bill of Rights? And how could they possibly get them back?
I think that one example of this is suspending the right of habeas corpus during the time of war. I think that we've seen this back then when the Civil War had happened. Jefferson and Congress had suspended the right of habeas corpus to the people. So we eventually saw it come back when it was all calmed down and there's not so much warfare going on and when it had ended.
Another right that's not necessarily in the Bill of Rights, but it's one of the many amendments that we have are voting rights. So felon disenfranchisement is a huge way that people are getting their rights taken away right now, and they're trying to pass the HR 1 bill to end felon disenfranchisement, and Florida has recently passed an amendment to end felon disenfranchisement. So that's a way that they can get those rights back to vote.
Thank you. Kurt or Candida?
Canada, you're muted.
So what do you think has been left out of the Bill of Rights?
I think that the right to healthcare has been left out of the Bill of Rights, and a lot of other countries do have the right to healthcare. I think that's really important, especially right now, being in the middle of a pandemic. The right to healthcare is really important, and I think that's something really important. A lot of people don't have the right to healthcare or have access to healthcare. By making that a right that's in the Bill of Rights and even making it a fundamental right, I think that would be really important and would help a lot.
Anything?
Yeah, I agree with Liz. I think that the right to privacy is something that is strongly left out. I think that we can interpret a right to privacy through the number of rights of the First, Third, Fourth, Fifth, Ninth, and possibly even the Second Amendments.
Well, you say the right to privacy, which has been established by court decision. What's the difference between amendment and court decision, do you think? I think
that
is James frozen?
I think so.
Sorry, can you step in until he loosens up, Elizabeth?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so I think that the difference between an amendment and a court decision, well, first, amendments are way harder to actually make, and court decisions are much easier, and they're just laws. They're not in the Constitution. So I think that laws are way easier to make, but they're also might be more easily violated because they're not technically in the Constitution. So they're not under strict scrutiny most of the time.
Yeah, I mean, I have another example for a right that we should incorporate into the Bill of Rights. I believe that the right to education should be. It's already recognized in all 50 states as like a right in their constitutions. And there was a recent case, Gary B. v. Whitney, where they want to establish education as a fundamental right after it got appealed in the Rodriguez case. And it has a really good chance of getting to the Supreme Court. And if this becomes a fundamental right, like this is amazing for like kids who like have really bad school, like in this case, where kids in Detroit were leaving school virtually illiterate after attending grade school. And this would just be amazing for our country.
So you've mentioned the right to education a couple times, and I want to ask an academic question. Then, is it all academic? The natural, or excuse me, the positive versus the negative right. So, isn't it just point of view? You have the right to education. No one can stop your right to education. Does it matter how I look at a right, that if it's positive or negative?
I think that's more of a question of rights versus remedies. I think you have rights where you have the rights of you have this given to you, but then there's the question of remedies of who's going to provide it to you. So I think the real question is we have all these rights that are listed, but we don't really have something that guarantees that we're going to get those certain said rights and something that would provide it.
Very good. Let me think.
What about women?
There you go.
Have they been left out of the Bill of Rights?
I think at first, definitely yes, but I think through the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment, it does gradually incorporate to the states that you have to include them in all decisions that were made through the Bill of Rights. So yeah, I believe that back then they definitely were, but nowadays I think that due to the Equal Protection Clause, they are protected.
How about on the other side of the coin, though, the ERA not having passed yet?
Could you repeat that? Sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, could you repeat the question? Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just saying, what about the ERA, which hasn't passed? Is that still an issue that needs to be addressed on behalf of women?
Yeah, I think that it is important. And I think that especially because we have equal protection and we really don't. And I feel like women are not really treated equally as men today, even though we have all these words that are saying that they're supposed to be treated equally. I really don't think that they are. So I think that it's really important to make them be treated as equals.
Can you think about other rights that perhaps aren't included in the Bill of Rights that should be?
Yeah, I think a perfect example of this is the right to shelter. Inside Massachusetts, we have a law of a right to shelter, but not federally. There's no law or amendment that says that you are guaranteed a right to shelter. We can see in countries like Finland, where they have a right to shelter guaranteed by government, where they basically eliminated homelessness. So I believe that we should do something here. I think we can easily do that if we pass it through Congress, through Article 1, Section 8 of the Article 1, Section 8. Under their power, I believe that we could pass a federal right to having a set base of having housing as protection. And then I believe that we can actually use an interstitial view of going on top of that and adding on more protections that we do through the laboratories of democracy created in New Ice Company v. Leibman.
What do you mean by interstitial?
By interstitial, I mean that we can add on more rights that we have at a federal base level. So we have you have a federal floor of the level. So I believe that if we were to add on to it, that it were it could be stronger, like we see with in many cases like voting rights and such.
Okay. Wow.
Very good.
Great job. Great job. Really nice job.
Okay, we're now our turn to give you some feedback. Candida, do you want to start us off?
Sure. I thought that was a really lovely presentation. Thank you. And not only that, but James, you handled being offline. Well, thank you. I thought that was really stunning. I appreciated very much your discussion of Cicero and Aristotle and Locke and natural rights. That was a very nice way to start. And then going immediately to the 14th Amendment and incorporation was really important. It gave a good feeling of that people weren't paying much attention until the 14th Amendment came along, and then things started to perk. I also really appreciated your discussion of the Sixth Amendment, positive versus negative. That was well done. In Pennsylvania, with the voting rights right now, habeas was a great thinking. You just had really wonderful thoughts and examples. I thought you did a really beautiful job, and I hope that you've really enjoyed doing this experience. I hope you've had fun, because I hope will ensure that every one of you will be voting the rest of your life, will be a wonderful citizen, teaching everybody around you, involving them, reading the paper. But I hope you'll also think about perhaps representing the rest of us in some way or another, whether you go to law school and go that direction or be representative, local, state, or federal government. We need you, and we need people who have your education, and you've shown that you really have a very good understanding. I would be thrilled to have any one of you be a representative in Congress. You would be way ahead of the game. So thank you very much. It was a real pleasure listening to you. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll start with your opening statement as well, because it's so easy for this one to get out of control. And so I really appreciate you going back and settling us quickly. And I like the historical conversation, because it's so easy to forget about the why and how we got here, and the why we got here too. And so you did a nice job of bridging both the current events all the way back. And so I thought that was a helpful appreciation and context. Really enjoyed the conversation. This is a very esoteric conversation, so you can talk about almost anything, and that makes it both fun as well as intimidating. But I thought you all did a great job. We had a great conversation, so thank you very much.
I agree with my colleagues. That was a very nice presentation. You covered the subject matter thoroughly. You were comfortable with the subject matter. I was really impressed that you pulled in Cicero and Aristotle and Locke into the conversation. I love the classics, and that just sort of felt good to hear them talked about. And also to piggyback on what Kurt just said, these are esoteric questions. Another way of putting it is a lot of them are unanswerable. And so they're just interesting to talk about. And I thought you did a really good job. You clearly understand the subject matter. You should be proud, very proud of your work. So thank you very much.